All right, let us begin. Let's take a deep breath, straighten our spine, relax our shoulders, inhale and exhale. Inhale slowly and deeply, exhale slowly and deeply. Relax your physical body. Relax your physical body completely. I am that I am. I am not the body. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. I am not even the mind. The mind is just a subtle instrument of the soul. I am the soul. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. I am connected and one with my higher soul. I am that I am. I am one with the divine spark within me. I am a child of God. I am connected with God. I am one with God. I am one with all. Now take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale slowly. Be aware of the stress and tension that you're carrying in your shoulders. And as you exhale, just release it and let that go. Inhale, exhale, and let go. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale and let all the pent up stress, pent up emotions, pent up frustrations release and let go. Be aware of the stress and tension you're carrying in your face, especially in your jaw and your forehead. Inhale, exhale, and let go. Once more, inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale and let go. Let go. Be aware of your physical body. Be aware of the physical body dissolving away. All the aches, all the pains. Simply be aware that you're floating outside your physical body, and all the stress, all the tension, all the pains are just floating away. And now visualize all the stress and tension that you have, all the anxiety, all the stress and the excessive thoughts, your emotions. Just watch them float up in front of you and just say, I let go. Release and let go. Now visualize all the thoughts that are in your mind. Any thought that comes to your mind, just look at it, acknowledge it, but don't dwell on it. Just let it go. You may get images of your work. You may be distracted by sounds you hear around you, of voices, of things, of traffic, of animals, of people. Just acknowledge it and say, I will deal with you later. Release and let it go. Experience the stillness. Experience the calmness and the inner peace within. And let go of that as well. All you'll see is emptiness, and you'll see brilliant white light coming from God. Address your invocation to the light, to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chokok Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Meiling, to all the great, great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher soul, to the beings of light, to the angels of love and wisdom, to the gods of the internet as well. We humbly invoke for your blessings of love, light, and power, of healing, inner healing, physical healing, of divine guidance, divine help, and divine protection. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to gather together as a group to understand the subject of clairvoyance, and that we may use this knowledge to help us become better persons and better souls, to help serve humanity and all those beings we share our space on planet Earth with. Thank you for blessing us, for guiding us. We thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath once more. Inhale this light. Make sure your spine is still straight. Make sure your shoulders are relaxed. Just absorb this light into every particle of your being. As you inhale, draw the light deep within your body, to your fingers, to your toes. Inhale once more and bring the light deep within your system, deep within your core, and watch it radiate outwards as you exhale. Inhale once more. Hold the light within the system. Exhale and radiate it outwards. Now imagine that this light is radiating outwards in the room that you are, in the building that you are, in the locality that you are, in the city that you are. You may visualize that you're floating high above the city, and your light coming from God, passing through the teacher, passing through your higher soul, passing through you, is radiating outwards and outwards through your whole city. And now you may visualize planet Earth, beautiful, beloved Mother Earth, the size of a small ball, and your light is radiating through the earth, covering Mother Earth in peace, with love, with healing, with happiness and joy, with hope. Let this energy, let this feeling radiate throughout. Feel the connection, feel the oneness with Earth. Feel the energy, feel the sensation of happiness and harmony within your system. Now take a deep breath and bring your consciousness back to your body. Inhale. And as you exhale, radiate the feeling into your fingers. Inhale once more. And as you exhale, radiate the feelings into your toes. Inhale one more time. And radiate the feeling throughout the whole of your body. Stretch your arms out. Stretch your back. Stretch along the sides. Take another deep breath. And then now open your eyes with a big, big smile. May all your bodies, at all levels, at all planes, be aligned, be harmonized. So be it. Return back, give thanks to God for your help, for your healing. All right. Good evening, everyone, or whatever time it is that you'll be watching this recording. Today, we are touching upon pretty much the last of this book, the Clairvoyance book by C.W. Beta. And we're talking about clairvoyance in the past and the future, some of the mechanisms, some of the techniques that work with it, and what knowledge we need to have. So let's begin. Now, clairvoyance in the time in past, that is to say the power of reading the past and the future, is like all the other varieties, possessed by different people at different times with varying degrees. It ranges from the person who has all the faculties of clairvoyance fully at his command, down to a person who occasionally, very involuntarily and very imperfectly, gets glimpses of clairvoyance. Now, in the last session, we spoke about clairvoyance in space, where the first one was fully intentional, then became semi-intentional, and the smallest part was completely unintentional. The same thing applies for this as well. It applies for clairvoyance in time as well. So there are those who have all the faculties of time completely at their disposal, and they're able to see, they're able to visualize and understand what is going on, vis-a-vis a number of people who have no idea what's happening whatsoever. Now, a person of the latter type, let's say he may get a vision of some event in the past, but it would be coming with a lot of serious distortion. And even if it happens to be accurate, it would just be a simple glimpse, a mere isolated picture. And you'd probably be unable to relate to it, what had happened before it or after it. So there would be no context. So suppose you're having a meditation or you're talking to some people about something and you suddenly get this vision, okay, of some event that has happened. Maybe you've seen a bomb blast. Maybe you see an accident. Could be you've seen someone proposing to his girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, but you have no idea of what it is that you're seeing because the event is just like a mere snapshot. So in a whole huge movie, you suddenly get one still frame, And you're like, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but without any idea of what happened before it, what's happening at that time, and what's happening after, there is no idea how to interpret it. And that's what happens with clairvoyance in time, without any proper training, without any background information. Now, however, if you have this training, this person, on the other hand, can follow the drama connected with his picture backwards or forwards to any extent that seems desirable. And he can trace out with equal ease the causes which led up to it, which in turn it would produce. So suppose he's meditating and he suddenly gets a glimpse of, say, an accident somewhere. All right. And then he says, okay, wait, what is this? It looks like a train accident. Let's rewind. What caused the train accident? It was caused by someone falling asleep. All right, let's rewind. Why did this person fall asleep? Because he had something very heavy for lunch. Okay, why did this person have something very heavy for lunch? Because he ordered some food from outside and didn't have food from home. Let's rewind some more. Why did he order food from outside? Why not from home? Because he had a fight at his home. What caused the fight? Some financial problems. All right, so now you know that all of these things which are interrelated, a person with trained clairvoyance in space and time, they'll be able to trace back to the origins, find out what happened, and, well, possibly get some relevant information. Now, if it's clairvoyance in time, it stands to reason that a person might be able to prevent the outcome of what he is seeing. Should that be done? Should that not be done? That we'll be discussing later on. But point being that in clairvoyance, if you see just in time, if you see just one aspect of it, one snapshot, it's not nearly enough information to understand anything, let alone do anything about it. Okay. So now we come on to the next page, which talks about, in the case of a detailed vision of the remote past, how is it obtained and to what plane of nature does it really belong? The answer to both these questions is contained in the reply that it is read from the Akashic records, or the Akasha. Though the records are undoubtedly read from the Akash, or the mental plane, matter from the mental plane, it is not to it that they really belong. So what he's trying to say is that you may call it the Akashic records, but they don't really belong to the Akash. They don't really belong to the mental plane. Still worse is the alternative title, which is called the records of the astral light. So there's some people who say, I read the astral records, or I have astral vision. This is very, very misleading, because these records lie far beyond the astral plane, and all the information that can be obtained upon it are only broken glimpses of a kind of double reflection. We're going to explain what that means. Pay attention to this video. Okay, I'll let it loop a few times because of the gap. What you're seeing is a person taking out a block of ice from a frozen lake. Okay, playing that once more. Here he is, holds it in, lifts it up. It's a solid chunk of ice, as you can see. And as he lets it go, it shatters into thousands and thousands of different fragments. And this is basically what clairvoyance is like. We are not seeing the whole big picture. We are not seeing it in its originality, that it's in this lake, or that someone's bringing it up, or that it has two parts to it. All we're seeing is many, many shards. And this kind of information can be very, very misleading. So what we are seeing is maybe one portion or some parts of this image, a complete shattered part. Whereas the reality is it was lifted out of the lake, it's one solid chunk, and the original position of it was below the waters where it froze overnight. So anyone trying to give very strong records, understanding clairvoyance, making interpretations based off of it, these are difficult to understand for the simple reason that we are only getting small parts of a big picture. It's like saying that you are given red, green, blue, yellow, black, purple colors, and now make a masterpiece out of it. Draw the Mona Lisa based on only these 5 blobs of color or 6 blobs of color. So individually, you might say, okay, this is nice, this is this color, this is that color. If I mix these 2 colors, they give me a third color. But if you're trying to really understand and recreate the whole masterpiece, it's going to be extremely difficult until you can see the entire big picture. So that's the trouble with clairvoyance, with unpracticed clairvoyance, that is, you only get one small part or many, many different broken parts of what is one larger big picture. So let us then, to understand this very deeply, how it works and how we can actually see it clearly, we need to go back and carry our thoughts to the very beginning of the solar system to which we belong. We're all familiar with the ordinary astronomical theory of its origin, which is commonly called the nebula hypothesis, according to which it first came into existence as a giant glowing nebula. You know, the Big Bang theory, that's just very compressed, and then boom, it exploded, and the diameter far exceeding of orbit even the outermost of the planets. And then, as in the course of countless ages, that enormous sphere gradually cooled and contracted and formed the solar system as we know now. Occult science accepts the theory in its broad outline as representing correctly the purely physical side of the evolution of our system. But it would add that if we confine our attention to this physical side only, we'll have a very incomplete and incoherent idea of what really happened. So occult science, these authors, they say that yes, the Big Bang and the condensation of the gas cloud, which condensed and formed the sun, the various planets, and all the other cosmic bodies within our solar system and on the edges of it, they are there, they exist. That's all correct. But that is only the physical side of things. We must also consider the invisible side of things if we are to get a true picture, the big picture of what everything truly is. So they go on to say, let's postulate with the idea that the great being, the exalted being, who undertakes the formation of a system, whom we call the logos sometimes. So logos, this word, logos, is another word for God or the great creator. So the great being who is in charge of formation of a system, first of all, forms in his mind a complete conception of the whole of it with its successive chains of worlds. Think of it like an architect or an artist. Before they draw the masterpiece, they first have in their head what they want the picture to look like. Then they draw a rough outline of it on a piece of paper. Then they convert that outline into something a little more tangible on a canvas. Then they decide, they plan what kind of colors they need, what kind of materials they need, what kind of brushes they want, under what conditions they'll be painting it, and then they set about doing their task. Same for an architect, in which they will have the idea in their mind, they will sketch up a blueprint, they will actually, even before they go into the blueprint, they're going to drop in the schematics. They'll plan the kind of flooring, they're going to plan the kind of walls, they're going to plan the kind of insulation, the kind of material and structure and concrete and rebar and all those various details. So many details into it before they even create the first structure. And then once that thought has come into paper, they're going to take that paper, make a 3D model out of it, and then have people come in and actually construct it. And then after the construction is done, they're going to end up doing the beautification process where they'll paint it and decorate it and put all the nice things that make a house into a home. And only then will people come and live in it. So that's just a case of an architect constructing a complex. In the case of the great being constructing an entire solar system, well, he not only creates the entire system, but he also plans what's going to happen to them over a period of time. That this planet will then evolve into this, all the people on this planet, their souls will evolve into that, and then all of this will go through another cycle of evolution, and then that's going to form something else. So it goes into a whole lot of great, intense detail, forming the grand plan for one solar system. Now, of course, we have the God of planet Earth. We have the God of the solar system. We have the God of the Milky Way. We have the God of the entire universe. We have the God of all the universes, and so on and so forth until we get to the universal supreme God. So what this part is getting at is that the records, the information of time is in the memory of God. Anything which happens, so say for example, if you take the example of an architect or even any other kind of profession that seems applicable to you, you have made a plan and you're working on that plan every day for a certain amount of time, say for a few months, you're working on a project. So every step of the way, you write your plan, you write your whole information down, and you save your work. And then you save your work, you keep working on it until, say, something goes wrong. And then you say, okay, what work did I do on the 15th of February? Or what work did I do on the 10th of January? And you can go back to that point in time and then just see what edit you'd made and then work from that accordingly. So what this is trying to say is that if you're able to access information in time, it is saved in the records. So the second paragraph over here, by the very act of forming that conception, this great being, he calls the whole into simultaneous objective existence on the plane of his thought. So everything that he's going to create is all in his mind on the plane of his thought. And this plane, of course, is far above all that we know anything about, from which the various globes descend when required into whatever state is required. So he has this entire plan, which is super, super high level. We can't access that. But from that super high level, everything else comes down into creation. And we have to keep in mind that unless we constantly bear in mind this fact of the real existence of the whole system from the very beginning of a higher plane, we'll constantly be misunderstanding and misinterpreting the physical evolution which we see place taking down here. Again, this theoretical part is super important. Otherwise, we'll be constantly misunderstanding and misinterpreting what we are seeing or what we are being made to see or what we're being shown. So it's clear that whatever happens within our system happens within the consciousness of the logos. That makes sense, right? Everything that's happening to us in our world right now, anything that has already happened to us, everything happens within the consciousness of this God, of this logos. And so we at once see that the true record of everything must be his memory. And furthermore, it is obvious that on whatever plane that wonderful memory exists, it cannot be far above anything that we know. And consequently, whatever records we may find ourselves able to read must only be a reflection of that great dominant fact mirrored in the denser media of the lower planes. So simplifying it, this great being carries in his mind, in his memory, everything that has happened. So if we want to find out clairvoyantly, okay, what happened 2000 years ago or 2021 years ago, we have to access the memory of the great being. And we have to go through it layer after layer after layer after layer, higher and higher. Now, we physical beings with physical bodies, with some idea and understanding of our astral, mental, and higher bodies, the only way we can access this very high subtle record is through a lot of purification. So again, it goes back to this very fundamental tenet that if you want to become good in your clairvoyance, if you want to refine your clairvoyance, you must be very, very purified yourself. Without inner purification, without inner cleansing, without character building, clairvoyance will not be accurate. It'll be very, very inaccurate. You'll be seeing a lot of wrong things, or it could just be your imagination. So purification is a must for clairvoyance. And it's only through purification that your energy will be able to access the very high energy of the great being whose memory contains all the records. And even then, since it is so far up, that memory is reflected. So it's like you're seeing moonlight, you're seeing the moon in a pool of water. So you're not really going to the moon, you're not really seeing the moon yourself, but you're trying to understand what's in the moon or what you're seeing reflected through a pool of water. So anything that you do see clairvoyantly comes reflected, comes through multiple layers, comes distorted. So even then, the accuracy requires a great deal of practice. On the astral plane, it is at once evident that this is so, that what we are dealing with is only a reflection of a reflection, and it's an exceedingly imperfect one. For such records as can be reached there are fragmentary in the extreme and often seriously distorted. So you know the thing, you can't see the reflection of the moon if the water is agitated. The water needs to be completely still. That is why astral clairvoyance through time will be very, very distorted because the astral is always moving. It's constantly whirling and rotating and whatnot. So for proper clairvoyance, there must be also a lot of stillness. So if factor number one is purification, factor number two is always stillness. We know how universally water is used as a symbol of the astral light. And in this particular case, it is very, very apt. From the surface of still water, we may get a clear reflection of the surrounding objects, just as from a mirror. But at the best, it is still only a reflection, a representation in two dimensions of a three-dimensional object, and therefore differing in all its qualities except color from that which it represents. And in addition to this, it is always reversed. So it's like a mirror image. You can see something, like if I raise my right hand, the software projects it that way. But otherwise, in your head, you're seeing the right hand as the left hand, and then your brain reinterprets it the other way around. So you're not even seeing the actual image. You're seeing the reflection of the reflection of the reflection of an image, which is, again, very, very distorted. Okay, now we come on to the next slide. But let the surface of the water be ruffled by the wind or disturbed for some reason. And what do we find then? A reflection still, certainly, but so broken up and distorted as to be quite useless or even misleading as a guide to the shape and real appearance of the objects reflected. So, this picture, again, as a reminder that what you're seeing is just broken and fragmented and in no way a true representation or reproduction of what the original solid chunk was. Here and there, for a moment, we might happen to get a clear reflection of some minute part of the scene, of a single leaf from a tree, for example. But it would need long labor and considerable knowledge of natural laws to build up anything like a true conception of the object reflected by putting together even a large number of such isolated fragments of an image of it. Long story short, imagine that you're recreating a solid chunk of ice based on all these broken shards, or that you've got a huge mirror which is completely shattered to dust, to fragments, and you're putting together the mirror perfectly by putting the dust particles together. How complicated would that be? For those of you who enjoy doing jigsaw puzzles, of course, that might be really enjoyable, but again, it would be a very long, very tedious, very hard exercise. Okay, now in the astral plane, we can never have anything approaching to what we have imagined as a still surface. So you'll never get anything as a still surface in the astral plane because everything is constantly, always, perpetually moving. But on the contrary, we always have to deal with one rapid and bewildering motion. Judge, therefore, how little we can depend upon getting a clear and definitive reflection. Thus, a clairvoyant who possesses only the faculty of astral sight can never rely upon any picture of the past that comes before him as being accurate and perfect. So, if you can only see but you don't understand, if you don't have the knowledge, whatever comes to you is going to be really imperfect, really distorted. Here and there, some parts of it may be so, but he has no means of knowing which it is. If he is under the care of a competent teacher, he may, through long and very careful training, be shown how to distinguish between reliable and unreliable impressions and to construct from the broken reflections some kind of image of the object reflected. But usually, long before he has mastered those difficulties, he will have developed the mental sight which requires such labor unnecessary. So, clairvoyance again, you have the physical kind of thing, the physical sight, you have the etheric, then you have the astral, and then you have the mental side. So mental clairvoyance is the one which is super clear, as opposed to any of the lower kinds, which causes a lot of distractions and problems, distortions. So again, one of the practices which we took from there, as you expand your physical limits of sight, okay, here's an exercise which you could do. We spoke of this in the last session, and I think it would be relevant that we just kind of touch upon it again right now. That okay, your eyes have peripheral vision. You can only see up to say this much. I'd like you to kind of do this if you're doing it right now, or even if you're watching the recording. We'll do it slow. Take your hands, place it by the side of your eyes, right by the side of your face. Okay, so you can very clearly see your palms. You can very clearly see the insides of your palms. Now just take your right hand and move it aside, all the while looking straight ahead. So if you're looking at this recording, if you're looking at it, please maintain eye contact, look straight ahead. Don't look to the right, don't look to the left, look straight ahead. And just move your right hand away slowly until it just about reaches the periphery of your vision, until you can no longer see it. Okay? Or you can just about see it. If you move your eyes, you can very clearly see it. But if you keep your eyes straight, it's just there at the edge of your vision. All right, bring the hand back. Now take the left hand and move and repeat. Keep your eyes straight, no moving the eyes. Keep your eyes straight until your left hand comes to the edge of your peripheral vision. If you move your eyes, you can see it very clearly, but keep your eyes looking straight. And now bring your hands back. And now, without moving it slowly, just take it back to the last position where you remember that you could see it. There. You have successfully become aware of all of this area in between. Previously, you were focused only on this much, but now your awareness has expanded. Your physical awareness has expanded to this area, to at least this much. So from the center, you've gone way to the side. And if you practice, you can go even more to the side until your peripheral vision becomes more and more developed. So you can keep practicing from the front, from the top, from the bottom, and various other motions that you can expand your peripheral vision, that you can see more. Okay. From this, there is a certain scientific component that I'd like to touch upon. Have you noticed that if it's a dark and dim kind of night, if you're outside, maybe you're in the countryside, you're in the roof, you're looking at the stars, you're often able to notice movement through the sides of your eyes, through your peripheral vision. But if you look at it directly, it often becomes invisible or kind of dim. You might have noticed this. The reason why this happens that way is because the main part of our eyes, the retinal part of our eyes, they're so overused, and we're also always staring at bright objects all the time, that their sensitivity has become reduced. So it's finer sight, finer objects, finer reflections are more easily seen through the sides of our eyes, through our peripheral vision. So if we have to become more and more clairvoyant, it is important to develop our peripheral vision. As we do this physically, we also must mentally affirm that the same expansion of our vision, the same expansion of our consciousness happens for our etheric, for our astral, for our mental, and so on. So expand the physical vision, which consequently trains your mind to expand all the other kinds of vision as well, until you're no longer limited by what is directly in front of you, but you're also able to see what is the broader, bigger picture. Now, mind you, all of this is happening as you're looking straight forward. Imagine how much more you can see if you move your eyes, if you move your head and you're able to see in that direction, or if you move to the other side and you're able to see in other directions. Your peripheral vision grows not only to this, but almost an entire 360 degrees. And that's just at the left and right plane. Imagine what happens if you look up or if you look down. You'll be able to see a whole 360 degrees completely in all directions, above and below. Now, isn't that an interesting practice to do? I've got a message coming in. We practice that. That's nice. So if you take some time out to practice and do these exercises, for those of you who've done our Hatha Yoga, who've gone higher up into the system, you might be recognizing some of the exercises as something that you already do. So it's really the brilliance of the teacher, Master Choa Kok Sui, that he put in some very simple exercises, physical exercises, for us to train ourselves without us really knowing it. And it's only when we go deep into the theory that we read books like this and disseminate that, oh, this information was encoded like this, but the teacher took it and he made it simplified like that. And so all you have to do is just practice and follow the simple instructions, and our abilities will start to develop on its own. It's absolutely remarkable. And so a great vote of thanks to Master Choa for taking such complicated teachings, such layered teachings, and making it simple and accessible. And even if we don't understand it, we can still benefit from it. You don't need to know how electricity works in order to enjoy the benefits of switching on the light. You don't need to know how a combustion engine works in order to be able to drive a car. So similarly, you don't need to know all the mechanisms of it, but you can still partially become clairvoyant. And so the beauty of this is that you are able to develop your clairvoyant faculties, and you probably have been training yourself to do so, assuming you've been doing your training, without necessarily knowing the detailed workings of it. And it's only through books like these that we come across the detailed explanations of how these things work. So was that useful or not useful? Any reactions, any thoughts, experiences? Yeah, okay. Clairvoyance in time, the past continuing. On the next plane, which we call the Devachanic plane or the mental plane, conditions are very, very different. There, the record is full and accurate, and it would be impossible to make any mistake in the reading. So up until now, we're talking about the astral plane, where it's very distorted, where there's so many reflections. But as you go one level higher to the Devachanic or the mental plane, the record is full and accurate, and it's impossible to make any mistakes in the reading. That is to say, if 3 clairvoyants possessing the powers of the mental plane agreed to examine a certain record there, what would be presented to their vision would be absolutely the same reflection in each case, and each would acquire a correct impression from reading it. So no distortions. If you've got the ability of mental plane, the mental sight, and you're seeing an object, if you're examining this, all 3 would see the exact same thing. Whereas in the astral plane, some would say, okay, it's a big circle, some would say it's a sphere, some would say it's a colored disc. They would have all kinds of interpretations. In the mental plane, all 3 would see the exact same thing, no distortions. However, if they compared their notes later on the physical plane, their reports would not necessarily agree. It is well known that if three people who witness an occurrence here in the physical world start to describe it afterwards, their accounts will differ considerably, for each of them will have noticed especially those items which most appeal to him, and will insensibly have made them the prominent features of the event, sometimes ignoring other points which were in reality much more important. So there's this saying, right, that where attention goes, energy flows. So the things which are important to us, consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, our attention will always be grabbed by that. And therefore, we shall only be attuned to those kind of energies. So right now, we could do another experiment. We've already done this experiment in the previous session, that if you look around the room and count how many objects you saw that were circular, okay? Just we could do this right now. In fact, let's do this right now. I'll count from 1 to 10, and in those 10 seconds, not yet, I'll tell you when to start. And in those 10 seconds, you will make a note of all the circular objects that you see around you. Okay? Anything circular. So we're going to start in 3, 2, 1, start. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay, in the chat, just write down how many circular objects were you able to see. All right, and already the messages are coming in. 8 circular objects, 6 circular objects, and more different numbers coming in. All right, so a few people participate in the exercise. 5. Okay, great. So those of you who did share, who shared right now, and those of you who will be doing the same exercise later on, without pausing, without stopping, how many square objects did you notice right now? How many square objects did you notice right now that you can think of? So here on the chat, I have 8 objects, 6 objects, 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay, didn't register. Someone says we didn't register how many square objects we saw. Someone saw 2. Someone saying, okay. All right, so now what we do is, I'll count you down exactly from 10 again. Please repeat your same sweep. Don't start now, that's cheating. And then notice all the square objects you saw. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. All right, in the chat, how many square objects did you notice? How many square objects did you notice? So 2, I'm getting some direct messages also. 9, rectangular. All right, rectangular is fine. I'll take that. 7, 4. Now, did these objects, okay, thank you. Stop now. Pay attention. Because as we're understanding, when you're giving your full attention to something, that's when the faculties really kick in. Did these objects materialize new? Did they just come into existence? No, they're already there. They were all always there. But it's only when you chose to focus on something very specific that your attention went over there and you're able to capture it. With clairvoyance, what happens is your attention is so expanded, your awareness is so expanded that you capture the entire information and you're able to recollect properly later on without wasting any time. So now we've already done 2 exercises. This time, I'm not going to give you any countdown. Just quickly tell me in the chat, of those rectangular objects you saw, how many of them were red? How many of them were blue? How many of them were any other color? Go. Of all the objects that you saw, rectangular ones, how many of them were red? How many of them were blue? How many of them were any other color? Okay, let's make it a little easier. Red, blue, green, or yellow. 4 colors: red, blue, green, yellow. So for those of you who are catching this recording, you may just fast forward a few more seconds. I can't look clairvoyantly into the future, so I can't tell you how many seconds to fast forward to, but probably you can fast forward, or you can just do this exercise on your own. So no red, no blue, no green. How many? But I mentioned some other color. So look at whatever other colors you are seeing, whatever other objects are existing. And now take an actual look around. Take 10 seconds or 15 seconds. We'll count that time down and make a note of what you actually saw and what you recorded, what you remembered. So go 10, 9, 8, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. So now you notice that your physical sight is taking that much more time to register as you're looking around the objects which are already there, that your consciousness is actively registering. Why is this training important? This is a part of the clairvoyant training, as the book says, as the chapters in the book says. Okay, I'm not making this up. This is important because our mind, in a state of rest, our consciousness is always thinking of different things. A regular person has what I think 65,000 thoughts every single day. So imagine if a person is sitting down for practicing clairvoyance, if you're looking at something and then your mind is distracted by a thought and you don't even know it. That is the most interesting part. You don't even know that your mind has been distracted by a thought. And so even before you can reach your target, you've already moved off to a different direction, to a different destination. So sitting down at the same time every day to practice your consciousness, to practice your awareness, to see and understand will help you train your clairvoyant faculties. Okay. So any questions upon this? Any questions up until this point before we move on to the other aspects? Okay. All right. In that case, we are just going to move on to the next part. Now, in the case of an observation on the mental plane, this personal equation would not appreciably affect the impressions received. For since each would thoroughly grasp the entire subject, it would be impossible for him to see parts of it out of proportion. But except in the case of carefully trained and experienced persons, this factor does come into play in transferring the impressions onto the lower planes. It is in the nature of things impossible that any account given down here of a devachanic or mental vision or experience on the mental plane can be complete, since 90% of what is seen and felt there could not be expressed by physical words at all. And since all the expression must therefore be partial, there is obviously some possibility of selection or omission of the part expressed. What it's basically saying is the things which are happening in the mental plane, in the higher plane, it is so unique to that plane that we don't have the words here to describe what we are seeing, to describe what we're experiencing. So 90% of what we are seeing in the inner world is lost in translation because we don't have the words or experiences to express it in the physical world over here. Now, this is different from saying that we are using only 10% of our brains. You might have heard this statement in some books, movies. It's actually a very quoted or rather misquoted line that human beings use only 10% of their brains. This is not true. This is very, very, very untrue. You see, at any given point in time, our brains are engaged in various activities. If you're sitting over here and you are hearing some noise, that is also part of your brain which is engaged. Your attention, your active attention may be a small part of your consciousness, but imagine your brain is regulating at this very moment your digestion, your bodily activities, your breathing. It's controlling the chemical balances or even fixing the imbalances in your body. At any given point in time, if there is disease in the body, the immune system is working all the time. And all of this activity is being governed by the brain. So there have been tests which were done where electrodes were placed, where they did all these studies, and it was found that yes, at any point in time, the brain itself is almost completely engaged. It is a false notion that we use only 10% of our brains. Okay, so that has to be kept in mind. That's the scientific truth. What this is saying, what this book is saying, is that we don't have the vocabulary, we don't have the experiences to record what we are seeing in the mental plane. Therefore, 90% of our experiences, of our visions, are lost when we're trying to use the physical plane to describe the objects of the mental plane. It's like trying to explain to a completely blind person who's been blind since birth what the color red looks like, or what the color magenta looks like, or what blue is like. You can say it's the color of the sky, but the person's never seen the sky. You could say it's the color of fire, but again, they've not seen anything, they've not experienced it. So, how do you describe any kind of color to a person who is completely blind? Or, for that matter, how do you explain the beauty of a song to a person who cannot hear? So, therefore, likewise, the experiences, the sensory organs used in the mental plane are so vast and so complicated that we simply lack the mechanisms and the vocabulary for explaining the same thing to anyone here in the physical plane. And more than 90% of that information is subsequently lost. So, back to the slide, it must be remembered too that the most perfect picture is in reality infinitely far from being a reproduction of the scene which it represents. For hardly a single line or angle can ever be the same as those in the object copied. It's simply a very ingenious attempt to make upon only one of our five senses by means of lines and colors on a flat surface an impression similar to which would have already been made if we actually had before us the scene depicted. Except by suggestion dependent entirely on our own previous experience, it can convey to us nothing of the roar of the sea or the scent of the flowers or the various tastes of the fruit or softness or hardness of the surface drawn. Point being, imagine that you've gone, let's try to explain this with an example. The language in these books is kind of complicated. So the example is, suppose you've gone on a holiday and you've gone to the beach. Okay, it's a new place and it's very peaceful. You love what the scenery is like, but more importantly, you love the sea breeze. The breeze is so refreshing. So what you do is you purchase a cabinet. Okay, you purchase a cabinet, you open the cabinet, and you capture some of the sea breeze in the cabinet. Then you seal it, and then you courier it back to your best friend at home. Okay, with a note saying, I have sent you some of the sea breeze which I've experienced over here. I would love for you to experience the same thing. So, what do you think will happen if your friend opens up the cabinet? Will he or she be able to experience the same sea breeze the exact same way that you got it? Yes or no? Chances are no. Why? Because we are trying to convey a very large experience through an object which is physically incapable of transmitting that experience. So that is the limitation of clairvoyance. That is the limitation of conveying the higher refined information to the physical plane. Small wonder then that however vivid and striking the descriptions might seem to his audience, he himself should constantly be impressed with their total inadequacy and should feel that his best efforts have entirely failed to convey any idea of what he really sees. And we must remember that in the case of the report given down here of a record read on the mental plane, this difficult operation of transference from the higher to the lower has taken place not once, but twice, because the memory has been brought down from the intervening astral plane. So you have one level of distortion already because you cannot experience it physically or explain it physically, but also a huge distortion has happened because this has gone through the astral plane, which, as we just read some time back, is constantly in motion. So it's only gone to the information up there, then it's also gotten distorted and it's come back down again to the physical. So obviously the data which you've got is going to be very distorted. Even in a case where the investigator has the advantage of having developed his mental faculties so that he has a use of them while awake in the physical body, he is still hampered by the absolute incapacity of physical language to express what he sees. So physical language is grossly inadequate to describe, to explain anything that you're seeing in the actual inner worlds. Now, we've spoken of the records as the memory of the logos, as the memory of God. Yet they're very much more of than just a memory in the ordinary sense of the word. So it might be very difficult to imagine how these images appear from his point of view. Yet we know that as we rise higher and higher, we must be drawing nearer to the true memory. We must be seeing more nearly as to what he sees. So the great interest attaches to the experience of the clairvoyant with reference to these records when he stands upon the Buddhic plane, the higher which his consciousness can reach, even when away from the physical body, until he attains the level of the arhats. Simplifying it, it's difficult for ordinary regular people to be able to access the data of the higher planes like that with such accuracy unless they have reached the level of an arhat. So when the person is an arhat, then it's much simpler because here time and space no longer limit him. He no longer needs and the astral plane to the mental plane to pass a series of events in review, because past, present, and future are all alike simultaneously present to him, meaningless as that may sound down here. So, for such a person who is so spiritually developed, past, present, and future are all present in front of him simultaneously. Indeed, infinitely below the consciousness of the Logos, as even that exalted plane is, it is yet abundantly clear from what we see there that to him the record must be far more than what we call a memory. For all that has happened in the past and all that will happen in the future is happening now before his eyes, just as the events of what we call the present time. So if we say, think of a happy event, re experience a happy event as we do in our meditation, we go back to the memory of it, we go back to the experience of it. Yet for the Logos, it is not a memory. He does not experience the memory. He is experiencing it as it is happening right in front of him right now. The events of the past are happening in front of him right now, just as this moment in time is happening for you, for me, right now. And for what's going to happen in the future also is happening right now. So here is a graphic. We experience time in a linear fashion. The past becomes the present becomes the future. In the book, The Existence of God is Self-Evident, Master Chokuksi mentions that the present is becoming the immediate past and the immediate future is becoming the present. So the present moment is just like it's constantly changing. So the immediate future becoming the present, immediately becoming the past. And then you have all of that happening in a linear fashion. But for the Logos, okay, I would like for you to imagine this is a room. Okay, you have doors in these rooms, one door leading out to here and another door leading out to there, and it's going forward all the time. So the past, you're walking through the past, you walk through the present, and you're walking into the future. You cannot go back. Your motion is always forward. Okay, you can only see what is happening in one particular room at that particular point in time. At that particular point in time, you cannot see anything beyond that. It's all going forward. But now imagine that instead of experiencing it forward, you've kind of floated above. You floated above the whole thing and you can see the three rooms simultaneously. You can see the past, you can see the present, you can see the future. You can see yourself in the past, in the present, and what you'll be doing in the future. That is what time travel kind of is like. That is the clairvoyance of time, where you're able to see everything as it's happening at the time. The past, the present, and the future are just laid out in front of you, and you, like an architect, it's like the ceiling was cut off and you can see everything happening in the room all at the same time. Okay, so dwell upon this for a moment. All right, now let's move one slide forward. When we see anything, whether it be the book which we hold in our hands or a star millions of miles away, we do so by a vibration in the means of space, commonly called a ray of light, which passes from the objects seen to our eyes. Now, the speed with which this vibration passes is so great, about 186,000 miles in a second, that when we are considering any object in our own world, we may regard it as practically instantaneous. So basically from the sun to our eyes, it comes to a rate of 3 into 10 to the power 8 meters per second, which is the speed of light in a vacuum. When, however, we come to deal with interplanetary distances, we have to take into the speed of light into consideration, for an appreciable period is occupied in traversing or traveling these vast spaces. Oh, so we've got a question over here. Can we see all of it at the same time? Okay, just go in the previous slide. Yes, you're seeing all of this happening at the same time. Yeah. We'll go back to that. We'll cycle back to that. Let's talk about this and we'll tie it all together, okay? For example, it takes 8 minutes and a quarter for light to travel to us from the sun, so that when we look at the solar orb, we see it by means of a ray of light which left it more than 8 minutes ago. The ray of light by which we see the sun can obviously report to us only the state of affairs which existed in that sun when it started on its journey, and would not be in the least affected by anything that happened there after it left. So really, we see the sun not as the sun is right now, but as the sun was 8 minutes ago. So we know from science, from our school, that it takes a little more than 8 minutes for the light to come from the sun to the earth. So from the moment the ray of light, the particles of light left the sun and came to the earth, 8 minutes have passed. So by the time we get the next bit of information, 8 minutes have already passed over here. So the information we get is always 8 minutes in the future or 8 minutes in the past. We are not ever getting present information from the sun at any point of time. So if anything happens, if anything important took place in the sun, maybe the formation of a new sunspot, for example, an astronomer who was watching the sun through his telescope at the time would be quite unaware of the incident while it was happening, since the ray of light bearing that news would not reach him until 8 minutes later. So, by the same logic, the light that comes to us from, say, the pole star, the North Star, that's more than 50 years away. So, we are seeing the light as it happened on the pole star, the fluctuations, the vibrations, and everything from more than 50 years ago. And the stars we see, the twinkling of the stars we see vast into the night sky, they have happened hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago. So, in a sense, we are living in a state of time travel every moment. Right now, even if you take this information really closer home, I am communicating this information to you via the means of an internet connection, which has a few seconds delay. So you might be practically getting it within a few seconds, but that doesn't change the fact that this instantaneity does not exist. It is a delayed response. So for you and me, having this communication in real time is not happening because it's off by a few nanoseconds, maybe a few microseconds, maybe a few seconds also, depending on the speed of the internet. Now, the speed of light, which is infinitely faster, from the sun to the earth is 8 minutes delayed. From the pole star to the earth is 50 years delayed. From any other star, hundreds of thousands or millions of years delayed. So now let's carry the argument a step further. Suppose that we are able to place a man at the distance of 186,000 miles from Earth, and yet to endow him with the wonderful ability of being able to see from that distance what is happening here beside us as though he were still here. So you send him 186,000 miles away, but he has a superpower of seeing everything in real time. It is evident that a man so placed would see everything 1 second later after the time when it really happened. And so at the present moment, he would be seeing what happened a second ago. Double the distance, and he would be 2 seconds behind time. Remove him to the distance of the sun, still allowing him to preserve the same mysterious power of sight, and he would look down and what you are doing, not what you're doing now, but what you were doing 8 minutes ago. How's that for time travel? And now he takes the argument a step further. Carry him to the pole star, which is 50 light years away, and he would see passing before his eyes the events of 50 years ago. He would be watching the childish gambols or the childish activities of those people who at this exact moment were middle-aged people. So your childhood is visible from someone on the pole star, assuming you're 50 years old. If you're younger, then well, you're not yet born, and they're probably watching your parents. Marvelous as this may sound, it is literally and scientifically true and cannot be denied. So it's not just that you are watching something that's come from the past, but someone from that far away, if he's looking at you, is not seeing you as you are right now, but how you were 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, depending upon the light year, the distance between them. So people often inquire as to the aspect of these records, whether they appear near or far away from the eye, whether the figures in them are large or small, whether the pictures follow one another as in a movie, or they melt into one another like dissolving views. One can only reply that their appearance varies to a certain extent according to the conditions upon which they are seen. On the astral plane, the reflection is just usually a simple picture, though occasionally the figures would have some motion. In this latter case, instead of a mere snapshot, it's a longer and more perfect reflection has taken place. So based on where we are, based on, again, space and time, they're interrelated. Based on where we are in space and time right now, the clairvoyant observation will differ. So if a person says, I want to look into the past or into the future, again, there is no guarantee that what you're seeing is exactly that because of the intervening amount of time it takes for that light to even reach us. So there's a very nice quotation by Master Chua where he says that light is always there, but how much comes to you depends upon you. And we can take this sentence and interpret it in a variety of ways. We can take it to mean the divine healing light, that the healing light is always there and it's infinite, but it's our own attitude, our own behavior that limits the amount of light that comes to us. If we are confident that yes, this healing light is going to come to us all the time and we're super healed, super healthy, then yes, that is our truth. But if we are very cynical, or we're so sure that we are always, the life is always getting in the way and people are out to get us, then through our own attitudes, we limit the amount of light that can come to us. And that's just for healing light. The same truth applies for clairvoyant light as well. So the light that we see, the light of knowledge that comes to us, is limited. Are we getting all the light from all the sources? Are we getting a little bit of light from all the sources, or only no light from no sources? So the amount of light that comes to us, whether it's physical light or healing light or the light of knowledge or the light of illumination, whatever you call it, it comes to us, and the amount that comes to us depends entirely on us. All right. Any questions up until what we've covered so far? Okay, great. So in truth, he observes not only what he would have seen had he been there at the time, in person, in the present. He sees, hears, and understands all that the people say, and he's conscious of their thoughts and motives. And one of the most interesting of many possibilities which open up to those who's learned to read the records is the study of the thoughts of ages long past. So someone mentioned in the chat right now that she always thought that the past, present, and future is happening right now. Physically, only the present is happening right now. But energetically, in the light, the past, present, and future are happening, will happen, yet to have happened, already happened. It's hard to explain in physical words, but you kind of get the energy of the thought behind it. And the beauty of this kind of an clairvoyant ability is that not only are they able to read the records, but they also understand the languages. They also understand the thought process, the reading, writing, all of it. So what splendid possibilities open up before the man who, in full possession of this power, it can easily be imagined. He has before him a field of historical research of most entrancing interest. Not only can he review at his leisure all history with which we are acquainted, correcting as he examines in it the many errors and misconceptions which have crept into the accounts handed down to us, he can also range at will over the whole story of the world from its very beginning, watching the slow developments of intellect in a man, the descent of the Lords of the Flame, and the growth of the mighty civilizations which they founded. So Lords of the Flame, again, this is covered in, I think, the Solar System and other books, where humanity and the scale of evolution, they happened on one planet, and then we came to Earth, and then civilization and the great plan unfolded there. So a person with that kind of clairvoyant ability will be able to see, understand, and examine all the records of things that happened so much back in the past, and understand the distortions that happen now, and take corrective measures for improvement in the future. So it's often asked how it's possible for an investigator to accurately determine the date from any picture from the far distant past which he enters from the records. The fact that it's sometimes rather tedious work to find an exact date. So how do you find out if something's happened exactly at that time? So the way we're dealing with, if you're dealing with Greek or Roman times, now this is a European book written with that kind of audience in mind. So the examples are Greek or Roman, but of course it applies to any civilization. So if you're dealing with any kind of civilization, the simplest method is to look into the mind of the most intelligent person present in the picture and see what date he supposes it to be. Or the investigator might watch him writing a letter or any other document and observe what date, if any, was included and what was written. When once the Roman or Greek date is thus obtained, to reduce it to our own system of chronology is just a matter of calculation. So point is, if you're time traveling in the past and you want to find out when you are and where you are, just ask the most intelligent person over there and they'll hopefully be able to tell you. And then you have to calculate. So a lot of maths is involved. Another way, which is frequently adopted, is to turn from the scene under examination to a contemporary picture in some great and well-known city, such as, again, Rome, and note which monarch is reigning there or who are the consuls for the year. And when such data are discovered at a glance, any good history will give the rest. So it's kind of like saying that, okay, like we had in our exams in school for history, that you'd say, okay, this is the name of the king, and this was his I don't know, say Akbar. That's the example I can think of right now. Say Emperor Akbar, the Mughal king, and you have Birbal as his chief counsel. So you say, okay, then this might have sometime be in the 1500s or 1600s. Or you look at, say, Queen Victoria, and you say, okay, she's married to so and so. You say, all right, then it might be in the early 1900s. Okay, and I don't think we need to talk about Meghan Markle or Prince Harry, but then you know definitely that you're in 2021. So anyhow, sometimes a date can be obtained by examining some public proclamation or some legal document. The fact is the times which you're speaking of, the difficulty is just surmounted. So you just have to look around when you're clairvoyantly time traveling, and based on what you're seeing, you can get an idea of when you are located. Now here they are giving a story, and we've moved away from clairvoyance in the past to clairvoyance in the future. So the previous one was chapter 7, clairvoyance in time, the past, and we've moved into clairvoyance in the future, and we've pretty much come to the end of the book, the end of the session. As a matter of fact, today might probably be the last session. Clairvoyance in future is not very clearly dealt with, is not given in so much detail, for the simple reason that the future is dynamic, the future is always changing. So whatever is happening depends on our choices, and not just our choices, but the choices of so many people we are interconnected and interrelated with, of our family, of our environment, of our country, and of all the other countries. Okay, you have the economic decisions, the political decisions, the environmental decisions, and all of these affect our life in the future. Now, if you asked us 2 years back, what would 2020 be like? What would we be doing in March of 2020? None of us knew that we'd be going into global lockdowns, but such it is. And now in 2020, when in the middle of a lockdown, if you asked us, how do you see yourself 1 year in the future? We probably wouldn't imagine that we are still under lockdown. So how the future is, how the exact future is, it's impossible to determine with any measure of exactness because the future is so dynamic. So it's so changing. So here they've given a story of clairvoyance in time in the future. A man who had no belief in the occult was forewarned by a seer of the approaching death of a neighbor. And the prophecy was given with so much detail, including a full description of the funeral, the names of the four pallbearers, those who carry the coffin, and others who would be present. Now, this person seems to have laughed at the whole story and promptly forgotten about it, but the death of his neighbor at the foretold time brought the warning back to his mind. And he was determined that, okay, you know what, I'm going to prove this prediction wrong. I'm going to falsify this prediction wrong by being one of the pallbearers himself. So 4 of them were described. He says, you know what, I'm going to make this false. I will be a pallbearer myself. He succeeded in getting matters arranged exactly as he wished. But just as the funeral was about to start, he was called away from his post by some small matter which detained him for only a minute or two. As he came hurrying back, he saw with surprise that the procession had started without him, and that the prediction had been exactly fulfilled, for the 4 pallbearers were those who had been indicated in the vision. Have you heard of this story, the merchant of Samara? I think it was the merchant of Samara. The story goes that this merchant, I think he was in Baghdad, and he went to the market and he saw death. Okay, the name of the story is The Appointment at Samara. He saw death and he was very surprised, and death was also very surprised to see him. Okay, saying that you've come to meet me, and the merchant got completely terrified. So he took off on his fastest horse and he ran and ran and ran and ran, and he went to Samara. And he had this notion that I saw death in Baghdad and I am now in Samara, which is very, very far away. So death will never be able to catch me. And on the way to Samara, as he reached over there, he finds death standing there waiting for him. And of course, he's killed. And so then the merchant says, I ran away from Baghdad to escape you. And the merchant says, yes, I was very surprised to see you in Baghdad in the morning because I had an appointment with you in Samara today evening. So we meet our destiny. There's also this saying, we meet our destiny on the paths we take to avoid it. So if something is happening in our lives right now, which are causing us distress, which are causing us pain, and we're looking for ways to kind of run away from it, we're looking for ways to avoid it, try not to. Because because the saying goes that we meet our destiny on the path we take to avoid it. So if you try to heal the situation, if you try to fix the situation by blessing through your spiritual practices, forgiveness, and all that, you'll find the situation starts to get better. Now, that's why I personally love pranic healing, because Master Chua, he's given us all the techniques we need in order to have a very beautiful and well-rounded life. So if you have physical problems, he's given us basic and advanced pranic healing. If we have psychological problems, he's given us pranic psychotherapy. For spirituality, we have, of course, achieving oneness with the higher soul and arhatic yoga. We have psychic self-defense. We have crystal healing. For financial problems, we've got pranic feng shui, spiritual business management, and kriya shakti. Okay, you name the kind of problem. Okay, relationships, again, pranic psychotherapy. You name the problem and the teacher has given a solution. So if you have a problem, try not to run away from it, but rather to tackle it with the tools which are given at your disposal, and then life will get better. So similarly, we often say, that's why people love reading horoscopes, right? They love doing the tarot and the decks and whatnot. Why? Because they want to have a sense of control of what's in the future, that they may prepare themselves accordingly. Point being, you can't change what's going to happen in the future, but you can change your attitude towards it, which will make the future a whole lot simpler for you, a whole lot easier for you. Because there is no doubt, looking at the screen, there is no doubt that just as what is happening now is a result of causes set in motion in the past, so what will happen in the future will be the result of the causes which are already in operation right now. Even down here in the physical plane, we can calculate that if certain actions are performed, certain results will follow. But our reckoning is constantly liable to be disturbed by the interference of factors which we have not been able to take into account. But if we raise our consciousness to the mental level, we can very clearly see much farther into the results of our own actions. We can trace, for example, the effect of a casual word spoken not only upon the person to whom it was addressed, but through him on many others as it passed on to widening circles until it seems to have affected the whole country. One glimpse of such a vision is far more efficient than any number of moral precepts in pressing upon us the necessity of extreme circumspection in thought, word, and deed. Long story short, again, inner reflection, firm resolution, character building. As we pay attention to the thoughts, our own internal dialogue, as we pay attention to what we say, so we might be constantly criticizing ourselves, thinking about our own shortcomings, about our appearance, about our finances, about our relationships, and whatnot. And then those same words, they are reflected in to those whom we speak to. So if someone is not happy about something and they're talking to other people constantly about it, that's the kind of energy that they're putting out into the world. So do you think such a person will be able to attract the right partner or the right job or even the right amount of health? No, because that's what we're constantly sending out into the world, and it's in giving that we receive. It's what we've put out, the like energy will attract. So we need to also kind of change and watch our own thoughts, our words, and especially, of course, our actions. But more importantly, we need to start with our thoughts and our words, because they have an effect on our actions. Our actions then change our habit, and the habits basically determine the future. So for clairvoyance, for observing the future, if you want to make a change in your future, a positive change in your future, start with your thoughts and words right now. That's what this is basically saying. Not only can we see from the mental plane the result of every action, but we can also see where and in what ways the result of our other actions, apparently unconnected with it, will interfere and modify it. In fact, it may be said that the results of all the causes in present in action are clearly visible, and the future, as it would be no new causes should arise, also lies open beyond our gaze. So it's like saying that if you take stock of your life right now, based on your habits every single day of the last 1 year, how do you think your future is going to be? For those who just kind of off topic, or maybe semi-connected to the topic, those who want to have a more secure financial future, all right, what steps have you taken to improve your income? Have you started a new business? Are you looking for a better paying job? Are you looking for more business opportunities? Have you developed any new skill sets? So you might be saying, okay, in the future, will I make a lot of money? Well, even if you need to win the lottery, you still need to buy the lottery ticket. So if you're not even going to buy the lottery ticket, how do you expect to win the lottery? And that statement applies not just for finance, but for your relationship and for your health as well. So based on your present actions and the actions of your past, you can more or less determine where you're going to be headed in the future. You just need to have that amount of introspection and inner reflection. Looking down on man's life in this way from above, it seems as though his free will could be exercised only at certain crises in his life. He arrives at a point in his life where there are obviously only 2 or 3 alternative courses open before him. He is absolutely free to choose which of them he pleases. And although someone who knew his nature thoroughly might well feel almost certain what his choice would be, Such knowledge on his friend's part is in no sense a compelling force. So you've known this, right? You've seen this in some people who you know, and you've known what their character is like. So they've got two options. You know for sure that they're going to definitely behave this way. And this friend, he's blind to that. He can't even see it. He can't sense it. So even if you were so helpful as to tell him that, look, based on your character, I know you're not going to stay. I know you're going to move, but I don't think that's a good idea. The friend doesn't care. He'll still do what he thinks he was going to do. Okay. But what he has chosen, when he has chosen, he has to go through it and take the consequences. Having entered upon a particular path, he may, in many cases, be forced to go on for a very long way before he has an opportunity to turn aside. So you are free to choose, but you're not free from the consequences of your choice. You have free will, but once you have made the choice, you have to encounter and live with the choices of your free will. There's nothing free. His position is somewhat like that of a driver of a train. When he comes to a junction, he may have 2 points to see this way or that way, so he can pass on to whichever line he pleases. But when he has passed on to one of them, he is compelled to run along that line which he has selected until he reaches another set of points, where again an opportunity of choice is offered to him. So a train going on a path can move left or right, but then if it takes the wrong path, it can't suddenly say, okay, no, I need to change. Well, he's gone off track. That's how that word comes in, gone off track. With this, we have concluded clairvoyance in time, in the past and future. So how do you have clairvoyance in time? A, you need a lot of theoretical knowledge in order to be able to understand exactly what you see, which is the knowledge of the etheric, the astral, the mental, and the causal, and all the subplanes, which we've already covered before. How to develop clairvoyance in space and time? Number one, purification. Purification and character building. Without that, nothing. So you need to have the knowledge, you need to have the purification that you may access that knowledge, and three, you need to have stillness so the knowledge can pass through you. And four, you must be aware that whatever you are seeing will have a large amount of distortion until you reach that kind of level, because the amount of information which is conveyed to you, we don't have the physical words to translate that. So with that, we kind of come to the conclusion of all the theoretical parts of it. And the last part, the methods of development, which is a really small portion. And that's basically where the book ends. Let a man choose a certain time. Okay, the book says a man, but it of course applies to everybody. Choose a certain time of day, every day, where you can rely upon being quiet and undisturbed, preferably in the daytime than at night, and set himself that time to keep in his mind for a few minutes entirely free from any earthly thoughts of any kind. Whatever and when that is achieved, direct the whole force of his being towards the highest spiritual ideal that he happens to know. He will find that to gain such perfect control of thought is enormously more difficult than he supposes. But when he attains it, it cannot but in every way be most beneficial to him. And as he grows more and more, he'll be able to elevate and concentrate his thought, and he may gradually find that whole new worlds are opening before his sight. Simplifying it. Number one, same date, every day, same time, where you will be quiet and undisturbed, where no other external distractions are there. At that, preferably in the daytime than at night. And at that time, you empty your mind, empty the mind completely, and direct the whole force of your being towards the highest spiritual ideal that he happens to know. So for me, the highest spiritual ideal that I happen to know is my spiritual teacher, Master Chow Sui. So for me, if I were to practice according to what the book says, would be to take a time in the day, say maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where it's quiet, not so much disturbed, everyone's doing their own thing. Sit down and meditate. Meditate upon the teacher. Invoke for the teacher's help, guidance, and protection, and all the blessings, and be guided by the teacher's energy, and then be lifted up. That is effectively what it says to develop clairvoyance. So it's saying that in order to develop clairvoyance, all you need to do is very quietly meditate. So, number one, know, you have to understand theoretically what it is that you're in for. Two, purify. Purify, purify, purify. Three, character building. Four, stillness. Five, meditation. Because that is in so many words, all of this information goes down to say the same thing. Quiet your mind, purify yourself, experience the stillness, and meditate. And for those of you who've been in pranic healing or Arhatic yoga for any amount of time, well, you're already pretty far advanced in your development, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. because these faculties are already coming to us. So with that, we've come to an end of this book, end of this lesson. If there are any practical angles, like we practiced the last time, we still have about 10 minutes, so we could do it. Otherwise, that's pretty much the summary of this book. So if you have any questions, now's a good time for them. If I may please request these points, purify, character building, stillness, and meditate, if you could put up in the chat on WhatsApp, then we can all benefit from it, because the chats over here, they kind of get lost every time the session ends. So you can have that on the chat on the group. That would be really, really beneficial. Okay, so if there are any questions, happy to take them now. Otherwise we'll close the session. Actually, we'll do one small practice. We'll practice the looking at ourselves. If you're interested, of course. If you're interested, please give a thumbs up or some indication that you're interested, and only then we'll do it. Otherwise, we'll end the session. 1. If it's only 1 or 2 people, then just go back to the previous recording. Okay, only 2 people. So nope, we are not going to go ahead with the clairvoyant practice because only 2 people have responded. So we'll end the session. Let's take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale slowly. Just still your mind. Relax your mind. Be aware of any thoughts, any activity that may be happening. Just acknowledge it and let it go. Now visualize your spiritual teacher in front of you. Could be anybody, whoever you consider to be your spiritual teacher. For me, I'll be visualizing Master Choa Kok Sui and directing my consciousness towards him, saying, thank you, Master, for your help, your guidance, and your protection. Look at your teacher in the eyes. Smile at the teacher with your eyes, and then say, thank you for your help, your guidance, and your protection. Thank you for your blessings, for bestowing upon me this knowledge, that I may be able to use this information, use this knowledge to become a better person, a better soul, a better healer, that I can help humanity wherever I am, that I may be able to help and reach out and help every person, every being on planet Earth, that I may become a good instrument. Thank you for your help in healing my life, healing my body of my pain, of my trauma, of my sickness. Heal me, thank you. Thank you for your healing. Healing my mind, healing my emotions, healing my relationships, blessing my relationships. Thank you for blessing my life, my health, my family, my loved ones, my friends, my work, my job, my business, my prosperity. Thank you for blessing where I live and all those who I'm connected with. Thank you. Thank you for blessing everyone on planet Earth, everyone whom I'll ever meet, and likely all those millions and billions of souls who I will physically never meet. But thank you for blessing them. Now mentally give thanks to the teacher. Thank the teacher for his work, for his sacrifice. Give thanks to the teacher for the tremendous effort which he undertook to simplify the knowledge for us. Give waves of love to the teacher, so much love. Fill the teacher with love, all your love, with so much respect. Bless the teacher with so much abundance, so much money. Bless the teacher with all the resources that he needs, that he may complete his project, his mission, and the fulfillment of his vision. Bless and bless. Bless the teacher's family, bless the teacher's work, bless the teacher's projects. God bless you, Master Choa. Thank you in full faith. Now direct your attention to the great light, to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, to all the spiritual teachers, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, to all the great, great ones. Thank you for your priceless blessings. To the angels of love and wisdom, to the angels of theosophy, to the angels of the internet connection also. Thank you for your blessings of love, light, and power, healing, guidance, and protection, abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for helping us gather together as a group, for giving us this opportunity to help ourselves evolve and become better persons and better souls. We thank you in full faith. Thank you, thank you. Take a deep breath, return to your body with a big smile. Atma Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in for this session on Clairvoyance by Leadbeater. Next week, since this is the end of the book, we'll probably go on break for 1 week and then we'll start with another book. The announcements of it will be made in the group itself. Thank you so much. Take care. Atma Namaste. Have a great rest of the day.